Today's edition of the Three Martini Lunch is brought to you in part by Bio-Optimizers. How are you feeling today? Are you dragging or do you feel thoroughly refreshed? Well, if it's a regular thing for you to really be tired and not feeling refreshed, try the 14-day sleep challenge for free from Bio-Optimizers, the makers of Magnesium Breakthrough. You can get a 14-day supply of Magnesium Breakthrough for just the cost of shipping. But you need to go to magbreakthrough.com/martini-free to start that 14-day sleep challenge. Look, many other supplements will give you just 1 to 2 forms of magnesium. Magnesium Breakthrough contains all 7 forms of magnesium, designed to help calm your mind, help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. To get your free 14-day supply of Magnesium Breakthrough, visit magbreakthrough.com/martini-free. This offer is only available at magbreakthrough.com/martini-free. That's martini-free, all one word. Overcome the struggle and get the most relaxing sleep ever with Magnesium Breakthrough. Just pay shipping. Go to magbreakthrough.com/martini-free. magbreakthrough.com/martini-free.
Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. 3 Martinis coming up.
Very glad you're with us for the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. The first martini certainly has some good to it. There's also a lot of crazy to it. We also then have a bad and a legitimate crazy, but a multifaceted final martini involving Joe Biden and the Middle East. Jim, let's start with the good part of the first martini, and then we'll also talk about the crazy part as well, though you really can't separate them. This is the BBC. Several NATO countries, including the United States, Germany, and the UK, have ruled out deploying ground troops to Ukraine after French President Emmanuel Macron said, quote, "Nothing should be excluded." Macron said there was no consensus on sending Western soldiers to Ukraine, I'll say. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has warned of direct conflict if NATO troops deploy there. But it was pretty clear as soon as Macron said this that these other countries want nothing to do with it. The statement from the White House saying that Biden believes the path to victory is providing military aid so Ukrainian troops have the weapons and ammo they need to defend themselves. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said there had been no change to the agreed position that no European country or NATO member state would send troops to Ukraine. And in the UK, the Prime Minister's spokesman said the country had no plans for a large-scale military deployment to Ukraine. That's an interesting adjective. Jim, every once in a while, you're in a meeting and somebody goes, "Hey, what about this?" And the whole room goes, "Absolutely not." And that's exactly what's happening here. You thought it was politically fraught with difficulty to find more aid. Try floating that out there. And Emmanuel Macron not finding a lot of friends on this one, which is good.
Yeah, I just want to tell Emmanuel Macron, Monsieur, pal, friend, buddy, don't spitball ideas about war and peace in public. I understand the value of strategic ambiguity. I understand the value of saying, look, we're not going to say what we are and what we aren't going to do because we don't want anyone, we want to keep everyone else guessing. But the damage from a statement like this is considerable, and there's more harm done than good. You're going to have to look far and wide to find somebody who is a bigger supporter of more aid to Ukraine. I do not think the U.S. should be sending troops over there. I do not think the U.S. should be enforcing a no-fly zone, because if you try to enforce a no-fly zone, sooner or later you will have U.S. or NATO fighters shooting at Russian MiG fighters, and that's going to lead to a shooting war between Russia and the United States, or Russia and NATO. Russia and NATO are not at war. I'm open to the argument that we're not at war either, that there's something of effectively a proxy war going on. But the objective is to avoid U.S. or NATO forces and Russian forces from shooting at each other, which means that when the Russians force down one of our drones over international waters, like happened a couple months ago, we have to act like it's not a big deal, even if it actually is a big deal. But the idea, just floating the idea, hey, maybe we'll send troops. This is not the sort of thing you should be putting out there without consulting with your allies. You shouldn't just be, tossing it out, speaking off the cuff, suggesting something like this. Greg, even Joe Biden could say, man, you gotta watch what you're saying. Be more careful in your public statements. But I guess you could just say what Macron did here, it's just a minor incursion into common sense or into insanity. It's not a full-blown invasion of insanity. The other thing is that, as mentioned, I was over in Ukraine late last summer. The Ukrainians definitely wanted help. They definitely wanted the best weapons we could send, that we could spare. They wanted anything we were willing to send. But they really did not say, oh, and we want the U.S. or NATO to come and fight alongside us. They see this as a matter of their personal honor. This is their country that's being invaded. These are their people. They're being victimized. All they want are the tools to do it. They want to go out and kill the Russians themselves. They might even take it a little bit of an insult, the idea that we got into what they see as their job of killing the Russians. So Emmanuel Macron, I don't know what you think you're doing, but he's not helping anybody. Just, shut your trap and go eat some cheese or something.
I'm still waiting for President Mitterrand to weigh in on this personally, and guessing Biden is
still waiting to hear from him too.
Now, it's different. It's definitely different, but we have seen people say, if we don't pass aid, Russia's going to invade a NATO country, and then your sons are going to have to go to war. That type of thing. So it's not the same, but that type of thing doesn't benefit us either.
No, it does. Let me observe that, look, like I said, I don't know if the Ukrainians will ever win the war, but I know they'll never quit. But let's assume at some point Russia feels like it has effectively won the war. They've taken Kyiv, they've taken Odessa, they've driven the Ukrainians back towards the Polish border or something. It is very easy to believe a day when either Putin or some other Russian leader looks at it and says, we can take a chunk of Estonia and dare NATO to respond. We can take some part of Latvia that has more Russian speakers. And we'll, let's see how NATO, fully goes. Let's do one of those minor incursions that Biden had referred to off the cuff. And would NATO go to all-out war over a small bit of territory? I don't know. I think it's safe to say a whole bunch of Europeans would say, I don't want to be on part of that. So, that scenario is conceivable. It's one of the reasons, the lesson we took from World War II is you stand up to the dictator early because it only gets harder later down the road. But hopefully it will never come to that. But we'll see what happens, Greg.
Anyway, let's talk about 4Patriots and the fantastic products you can find by going to 4patriots.com/martini. One of the great deals you can get there is a free solar panel with the purchase of the Patriot Power Generator 2000X. Plus, get free shipping on orders over $97. But don't forget about the last chance items over there as well. Your last chance to get a really great deal on the Patriot Pure items, including the UV phone sanitizer, the UV wand, the sanitation solution bank, and the disinfecting power bank. But of course, the marquee product over there is the Patriot Power Generator 2000X. It has double the capacity, expandable so you can run the big appliances like your fridge even longer, 12 outlets including 4 AC plus 2 USB-C outlets that can charge your phone 20 times faster. How great is that? Visit 4patriots.com/martini to get your Patriot Power Generator 2000X with the free solar panel included. Plus, get free shipping on orders over $97. Save more and get peace of mind now by going to the number 4patriots.com/martini. That's 4patriots.com/martini. All right, Jim, on to our bad martini now. And the border crisis has been kind of camping out in the bad martini this week. We talked about the horrific murder of Laken Riley on Monday, and we've only learned more grisly details about that heinous crime since that conversation. Yesterday, we talked about Eric Adams getting smacked in the face by reality and saying, hey, maybe those sanctuary city laws ought to be amended so that we can, get rid of criminal aliens to ICE and have them deported. But, we hear all the time about the busloads getting sent to the big sanctuary cities. But that's not the only place that people who come into this country illegally are sent. Joseph Simonson over at Free Beacon tells the story of Whitewater, Wisconsin. If you're a college sports aficionado, you might know UW-Whitewater in Division III had some pretty good football teams a while back. But Whitewater is a town about an hour west of Milwaukee, has about 15,000 people. They've gotten 1,000 new neighbors, mostly from Nicaragua and Venezuela. And those folks generally tend to keep to the shadows because they lack official identification, which is the fancy way of saying they're here illegally. Now, that means the town's population has grown by nearly 10%. In just 2 years, and they've got a serious resource problem here. The story says that responding to the influx of migrants has put the town in a $400,000 budget hole, including the need to hire a whole lot of ESL teachers there because all of a sudden they've got 300 new students who don't speak any English, which is not a common problem in Whitewater, Wisconsin. They also have seen an uptick in STDs. They found a baby in a box, and it seems like there's more than a little more extra drug sales and other activity happening in the area as well. So, Jim, we don't spend a lot of time talking about Whitewater, Wisconsin, and it's not just here. I've seen reports elsewhere in Wisconsin and throughout the country where this is happening. And so it's not just Eric Adams dealing with this. It's small communities who suddenly are $400,000 in the hole, and that's a lot of money for these communities.
Greg, you're right. We don't usually talk about Whitewater, Wisconsin on this podcast. But I will say that really since like the early to mid 1990s, I have been saying Whitewater is going to be a major liability for the Democrats. And it finally is true, roughly a generation later. And yeah, okay, I was referring to a different Whitewater. But still, it's, if it's happening in Whitewater, Wisconsin, it's happening in similar sized, similar communities from coast to coast. And yeah, of course, Eric Adams is going to get more attention. Muriel Bowser, Brandon Johnson out in Chicago. Yeah, the bigger cities are going to get more attention because there are more migrants there. There's more media coverage there. There's just more. It's within a short drive of national and local TV studios. But in all kinds of small communities, you're seeing similar effects. And I'm reminded of that utterly inane comment from D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, where she was complaining about this and saying how they needed more federal aid to cities and saying, look, we're not equipped to handle this. We're not a border community. As if El Paso is just awash in extra funding to deal with something like this. And we're just kind of now left in this state where, like, what did the Biden administration think was going to happen? I know that, that we all remember, remember the image of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez crying by the chain link fence, yes, how migrant families were being treated, and the idea that, now once I'm in power, I will undo everything Trump did on the border. And he made a whole bunch of steps to undo Trump's changes, immediately stopped all border fencing construction, all that kind of stuff. And, even though Vice President Kamala Harris went down to Central America and said, don't come, really nobody believed her because the administration the message was very clear. If you went up north of the border, you had an excellent chance of not encountering U.S. Border Patrol. You had opportunities to go around the border fencing that had been completed. And you had a decent chance, if you were caught, to say, I am seeking asylum in the United States. It's not safe for me to return to my home country. I wish to stay. And then being in a situation where, the hearing for that asylum claim would not be held for several years, including in some cases all the way to like the year 2035 or something like that. And you get to stay in the U.S. until then. So it's is it an open border? No, but it's a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, effectively open border. What, did the Biden administration think word wouldn't get out to Central America and really to the whole rest of the world? The message was very clear. If you say the right things, you can stay in America, and that you wouldn't all end up in, just stay in California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. That these people were going to end up going from coast to coast in big cities, but also ending up in places like Whitewater, Wisconsin. And did Biden think that everybody was going to be, wow, this is great, this is swell? Look, some of these people may be very, potentially very good people, but in one case they've either entered America illegally, or in other cases, they've entered and made an asylum claim that is sketchy at best and not going to pan out. And really, they're here for economic opportunity. But of course, some of them are here. They've got criminal intent. They're members of gangs. They're members of drug smuggling groups. And so now places like Whitewater, Wisconsin, which never really voted for no one ever said to them, hey, would you like to have 1,000 migrants come into your community? If you put that to people as a referendum, I think very few people ever would. Remember, the people in Martha's Vineyard loved it for like a day. And then they shipped him out to a military base. So everybody loves the idea of compassion for migrants on the cheap. Once it turns into a continuing expense for their community, even the bluest, most democratic, most kumbaya districts in this country will be like, whoa, 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 I'm not sure I like this idea. And that's where we are. We're living with the consequences of this. This by itself should cost Biden re-election. We will see how things shake out. But again, if I were in charge of the Biden campaign and, if I were the precinct leader in Whitewater, Wisconsin, I'd be really nervous about stories like this.
The story from the Free Beacon includes this about the drugs. Neighboring counties have expressed concern about cartel activity among Whitewater's migrants. One slide describes the surge in fentanyl seizures in recent years. Quote, all states are now affected, just like southern border states. Narcotics investigations are a substantial investment of an agency's resources, including financial, manpower, physical assets, and time. And it says the police there are strained by many more responses than normal. I mean, the leftist argument here, of course, is that we need to allow these people into the country because we're a compassionate nation, right? Well, if you've ever listened to some of the stories about what happens to people on their journey to this country, about the way they're fleeced for money that they really don't have, to be escorted by the cartels or others to the border, and what happens to them if they don't have the money, and the sexual abuse of women and children, it's absolutely revolting. And then once they get to the country, there are many, many more problems. It's not the Shangri-La they've been promised, because they're being exploited by all these people, but it's the impact on these communities is very, very severe as well. All right, let's talk about Fast Growing Trees, because I don't know if you knew this, but Fast Growing Trees is the biggest online nursery in the United States with more than 10,000 different kinds of plants and more than 2 million happy customers right here in the U.S. You can grow lemon, avocado, olive, or fig trees like we do inside your home on top of the wide variety of houseplants they have available.
Fast Growing Trees makes it easy to order online, and your plants will be shipped directly to your door in just 1 or 2 days. And along with their 30-day Alive and Thrive guarantee, they offer free plant consultation forever.
You want to spruce up your home, and now that we're hitting warmer temperatures and about to hit March and spring, get the plants that you need to really brighten up your home, and plants that you want to see. For us, it's the fig, the monstera, the lemon, and who knows what's next. Fast Growing Trees has the best deals online, up to half off select plants. Plus, when you use the code Martini at checkout, you save an additional 15%. Go to fastgrowingtrees.com and be sure to use the code Martini at checkout for an additional 15% off. FastGrowingTrees.com, code MARTINI. Offer is valid for a limited time, and tell them that we sent you.
Don't believe the BS. The Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski. Every day, Chris helps unpack the connection between politics and the economy and how it affects your wallet. What's next for the Biden propaganda machine? Bidenomics went over like a lead balloon. Ahead of Biden's State of the Union address, he plans to address shrinkflation while blaming grocery store chains for gouging its customers. Whether it's happening in D.C. or down on Wall Street, it's affecting you financially. Be informed. Check out the Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, Jim, on to our final multifaceted martini. I'm going to call it a crazy, but I think there's even more dimensions than that. Joe Biden finally did, as I think you mentioned yesterday, a really hard-hitting sit-down interview this week with a serious member of the mainstream media. That was Seth Meyers, the former SNL guy who now hosts Late Night on NBC. Of course, it was a completely powder puff interview, and for part of their visit, they went to, I guess, the commissary at 30 Rock and got Biden some ice cream. And while he was there, the media was allowed on this little part of the excursion, and the question came up, hey, Mr. President, what are you hearing about a possible ceasefire in the Middle East? And here's what Biden said.
Can you give us a sense of when you think that ceasefire will start, sir?
Well, I hope by the beginning of the weekend. The end of the weekend. At least my national security advisor tells me that we're close. We're close. It's not done yet. And my hope is by next Monday, we'll have a ceasefire.
Yeah, they're not really close. Again, hat tip to Free Beacon. Representatives from Hamas, Israel, and mediator Qatar. What's the problem right there? However, all reportedly said this optimism was exaggerated. First, Hamas. The primary and main issues of the ceasefire and the withdrawal of Israeli forces are not clearly stated, which delays reaching an agreement, two anonymous Hamas officials told Reuters on Tuesday. They added there are still big gaps to be bridged. Additionally, the Israeli Ynet news website cited unnamed senior Israeli officials who said they don't know, quote, what Biden's optimism is based on, unquote. And a spokesman for Qatar's Foreign Affairs Ministry also said the two sides needed to work to bring themselves together closer on a ceasefire deal. We don't have a final agreement on any of the issues that are hampering funding and agreement. So I'm not sure what Jake Sullivan is telling Joe Biden, but whatever Joe Biden thinks is the current state of affairs, nobody else seems to think so.
Well, I can be snarky about this, but I'll make one semi-serious point about this. Biden's aging. There have been questions raised about his memory from the Her report and elsewhere, and he had famously said in that interview with Stephanopoulos, no one had ever recommended him to keep a couple thousand troops in Afghanistan to keep the airports open and the air base open. And both Milley and I believe other military officials had said, yes, in fact, they had advised the president to do so. So the question is, how much does Biden remember what he gets told in briefings? And based on this, how much does Biden absorb what he's told in briefings? Does he remember? Does he just kind of hear the good stuff and doesn't hear the bad stuff? Or is he just, this is just your usual presidential optimism and happy talk and this, reflexive insistence that everything's going great and something terrific's about to happen tomorrow and just you wait and see and, all that stuff. There were some people who looked at this and said, he's talking about a ceasefire. He's talking about life and death issues. He's with Seth Meyers, hosts a late night comedy show, former SNL, the show that's not, this is not 60 Minutes. This is not hard hitting questions. And they went out to an ice cream shop, of course, because that's what Biden does everywhere he goes. And it just looked bad for the president of the United States to be, talking, we think we got a ceasefire coming in between licks of mint chip. And that's the irony. I wrote about this in the Corner yesterday, that like somebody, about a year ago, in a profile of Biden's messaging difficulties, somebody had said, look, he's got to talk to the country about very serious things. And that's not the sort of thing you can easily do when you're going to visit ice cream shops. Now, here's the irony, is Biden's actually doing exactly that now. He is now talking about life and death issues in the Middle East while getting ice cream cones with Seth Meyers. There is a major contrast between what is being said and the context in which Biden is saying it. And we all know why this is the case. We all know why this interview he did with Seth Meyers was, I'm pretty sure, the only sit-down interview he's done with anybody on television since late fall. I think it was 60 Minutes, and I think it was like mid-October or so. Because he can't do the other ones. There's a reason he doesn't do formal press conferences anymore. There's a reason he doesn't do all this stuff. So it is bad that the only way reporters get to ask questions is by shouting questions to him when he goes to the ice cream shop. It is further bad that there is this, really, cringe-inducing contrast between what Biden is saying and the circumstances. And thirdly, it is, the third cringe-inducing thing is that apparently what Biden is saying is, at best, distant cousins to what the situation actually is, if they're related at all. So that's where we are, America. And, these guys are losing to Trump, and at least in a whole bunch of polling. And like, oh, my goodness, how could this be? Well, because the guy can't communicate. That's why.
You want to convey optimism. You do that vaguely, I would argue. Yeah, we're working hard. We're having conversations. We're hoping to find some sort of agreement soon. Not, hey, by the end of the weekend. That's probably not going to pan out too well. And Biden, of course, is now trying to play it too cute by half with the Israelis and the Palestinians. And that caught up with him a little bit yesterday in the Michigan primary. He was the overwhelming winner on the Democratic side. I think the uncommitted, about 14% That was enough to get Marianne Williamson to unsuspend her campaign. So I'm sure that will shake up everything over the ensuing caucuses and primaries here. But Jim, you've written in the Jolt today that if Biden's trying to reposition himself as a Palestinian ally to win back support from folks in Dearborn, that's probably not going to happen, and it's probably going to backfire worse than if he had just done nothing.
If you want to interpret yesterday's Michigan results as a sign of really bad news for Biden, he's got to do more to win over these 100,000 people who selected uncommitted. You can. The problem is there's always an offsetting loss if you were to move your positions in a more pro-Palestinian, some would argue pro-Hamas, and more anti-Israel position. There's no magic wand that which you gain votes and you don't alienate voters that had previously supported you. And for all of his flaws, Lord knows the guy has many. Biden has been through most of his career pretty darn pro-Israel, particularly by the standards of the Democratic Party. And he's described himself as a Zionist, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not like these 100,000 are likely to change their minds because of a window dressing. They would probably need, at minimum, recognition of a Palestinian state, and probably maybe even, I think they're running around calling him Genocide Joe. Now, do you think they just need a little tweaking in policy to come around on Biden? I think people like this have probably been lost. And there's this saying in politics, you got to dance with the ones that run you. Biden can't change at the 11th hour and say, oh, I'm much more anti-Israel, I'm much more pro. Nobody's going to be fooled. Or at least the case is that the pro-Palestinian voters it's going to be too little too late. They're not going to jump on board because they're still going to be angry about Genocide Joe. And the pro-Israel voters, both in the Democratic Party and independents, and anybody in the Republican Party who's wary about Trump is going to look at this and say, well, I can't vote for that guy either. Which works to Trump's advantage because Trump would love to have these people vote for him, but deep down, what he really just needs is them to not vote for Biden so that Biden has a lower vote total than last cycle. Choose very carefully, Joe Biden. I feel like the old knight at the Grail. Choose, but choose wisely.
And if you recall Walter Donovan, he chose poorly. So the best understatement in the history of cinema, I would say, if you know what happened to Walter Donovan when he chose the wrong Grail. Sorry to be a spoiler, but it was, 35 years ago.
It's 1989. I think you've had enough time to catch it.
Jim, have a great day. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch if you don't already. Tell your friends to join us too. We'd love to have them listening. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. They really, really do help us. So please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific Wednesday and join us again on Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.